sharks, and suicide, or something
Yes,
like
that is correct. With that phenomenal memory of yours.
Well, I'll tell you what I do remember. And by the way, let me say this, because I'm going to be asking you a question about this in just a moment, that we are recognizing Women's Month, and Wanda and I attend Friendship Baptist Church. Our Sunday school class Zooms in every Sunday morning, and among those who participate is a young lady whose name is Dr. Tiffany Anderson. She is the superintendent of schools in Topeka, Kansas, and has been selected one of USA Today's Women of the Year.
Nice.
So I just want to make sure that that is acknowledged. She knows that Wanda and I are aware of some of her accomplishments, certainly not all. But certainly congratulations to Dr. Tiffany Anderson. And if you looked at the call paper, you saw prominently displayed Judge Hardwick.
I did.
Oh, go ahead. Maybe you could make that acknowledgement better than I.
Well, no, maybe not better, but congratulations to her, Lisa Hardwick.
Yes.
Judge Lisa Hardwick.
Judge Lisa Hardwick. And that is so good. But I'll tell you why I said that I would be broaching that. When you and I talked, one of the things that is so important to me in attempting to follow you and attempting to keep up with you as far as your writings are concerned is your respect for young black authors as well as those who are seasoned. And this is something that I really want to get into.
Ooh. You know, I don't know where you draw the line between young and the other authors, because I've been wrestling with some of the so-called classic authors, which are in an entirely another generation. You know, so I'll need some clarity on that.
Oh, okay, very good. And when I say that, I am simply suggesting that your reach spans generations.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that the assumption might be, if someone says Millis Doc Bass and Brother Carl Boyd are talking about authors, black authors in particular, the assumption might be that we're talking about contemporaries whom we know. But your respect for authorship goes beyond that, and prayerfully, pretty soon, we're going to be talking about this on a regular basis.
My hope is, and I say this out of respect for all authors, but particularly those who are coming along, that there will be more.
Yes, sir.
That there will be more and more, that they don't drop out of the writing field. My son told me years ago, I think we were talking about some book I wrote, and he said, well, Pops, he said, we don't read those. And he said, if it's not on here, we don't read it.
Right.
And so, but somebody has to write it. And those are the ones I want to encourage.
And it's interesting that you said that, because my prayer is that my instinct is somewhat accurate. I honestly believe that there are folks coming back to the written word in its printed form. I really think that after a while, even among young people, there is a longing to be able to treat the word with some degree of intellect by turning some pages. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm turning it in a way for the convenience of this particular program, because the week of February 18th, you wrote about first ladies. Now, the interesting thing about what you wrote and why the writing aspect of it is so important is because take 10 people. What number out of 10, if you use the term first ladies, would think that you were talking about the spouses of gentlemen? Probably
most.
8 to 9 out of 10.
Yes.
But your writing was exquisite. And the reason I said I wanted to turn it was because when you and I talked and we were talking about writing, we were talking about authors. At that moment, my conscious mind was not concentrating on this being Women's Month. But you were ahead of the game mid-February. And those women about whom you wrote really need that kind of exposure. What inspired you to write that, and who were some of those you wrote about?
Well, when I wrote the book, Slave Ship to Pulpit,
yes,
all right, I didn't want to say it was the rise and call of the black preacher. I was not trying to engage in any fisticuffs or any argument with other people about whether or not women should preach. I didn't care about that issue.
Right. Right.
As a matter of fact, well, there's some long stories I can tell you about that.
That's all right. Please go right ahead.
But the point being that our history is very precious to me.
Yes.
You know, I honor every bit of it. And there are some stages in our history where we struggled with great difficulty to stay on our feet, to get our voices heard, to make some kind of impact on the world, and to make progress at the same time.
Yes, sir.
All these things had to happen in the context of coming out of slavery and making progress, or as some people call it, assimilating within the American culture and so on.
Exactly.
But all of that had to happen at the same time we were learning how to read, learning how to write, you know, learning how to express ourselves so that we would be respectable communicators in the context of world language.
Yes, sir.
Articulation. But one of the things that popped out of our history were some indescript female preachers who were not perhaps called preachers at the time, who just preached.
Yes, sir.
Who talked
Yes,
about
sir.
God, who encouraged people in the Lord. And so it was only until later that, you know, as we organized our systems and put our little protocols together, that we began to say, well, women can't call them preachers and blah, blah, blah. So I pulled those out of the book.
Yes, sir.
Because there is a section in the book called First Ladies.
Yes.
But there's also a section called the Sons of Thunders. And First Ladies merely represented some of the very first black female preachers in African American history. Zilpha, you know, Elaw, and Julia Foote, and
yes, sir.
You know,
yes,
on
sir.
and on and on. And so who had great impact and continue to have great impact.
Yes, sir.
Those sisters have almost literally had to fight their way into the protocols of recognized preaching, you know.
It was so fascinating the way you treated it, because when I think about our history in the Word, if someone says Richard Allen, and we think about the African Methodist Episcopal Church, one of the females about whom you wrote had an introduction in the Methodist Episcopal Church that did not work out quite as smoothly a transition, and it moved her to the African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Right.
When we talk about pioneers, when we talk about bravery, when we talk about commitment, and we think about Harriet Tubman, we say, oh man, Harriet Tubman was a tough sister. But you write about some folks we haven't heard about who had to be eminently tougher, or at least as tough.
Yeah. You know, the very first one, as I recall, and she didn't even have a last name, Elizabeth.
Yes, sir.
They just called her Elizabeth. And she was, as far as my research tells me, was the very first African-American female preacher.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It didn't have a last name as far as the text is concerned, and they struggled, the sisters struggled. Sometimes they had violent husbands, they had or lost husbands.
Yes.
Start all over again, and still preach the word.
And to say the least, detractors.
Yes, absolutely.
When I think about how long ago that was, you and I might have shared this story or we might not have, but I've told it a few times. I was formally introduced to Kansas City, Missouri 2 years before I moved here from Chicago. Mm-hmm. I moved to Kansas City in 1980, but the Operation Push Convention was held at the Mulebach in 1978. So in 1978, I was directing the Chicago Push for Excellence program, and I wrote that program in 1974, but I didn't take chairing that program until then. Mm-hmm. And Will MacArthur here in Kansas City was at Central, and he had the Kansas City Push for Excellence program, and a gentleman whose name was Carl Sewell in Los Angeles. So we were all here. And Reverend Jackson allowed me to MC the programs dealing with Push for Excellence, which became Push Excel, Monday, Tuesday. Then he had a presentation that he made and allowed me to MC that program as well on, that had to have been Wednesday evening. Mm-hmm. So we had done 3 programs where he allowed me to MC, and I was taking it easy Wednesday at the Mulebach, and the phone rang, and Reverend Willie Taplin Barrow. Have you ever heard that name?
No, I have not.
Reverend Willie Taplin Barrow was a very short female from Texas who was the vice president of Operation Push. Mm-hmm. And when I answered the phone, she said, "Boy, what are you doing?" I said, "Reverend Barrow." And she said, "I'm over here at Zion Grove. And Jesse wants you." So I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Well, are you coming over?" I said, "I thought he wanted me on the phone." And she said, "No, he wants you to come and MC this program at Zion Grove." And I said, "Reverend Barrow, we did the programs yesterday. We did the programs this afternoon. We did the program Monday. You got Otis Moss, and you got Bishop H.H. Brookins, and you've got Reverend Johnson and Reverend Hartsfield and Reverend Thompson." And then I said, "Wait a minute. You're Reverend Barrow." And she laughed at me. And she said, "Where do you think you are?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said they wouldn't let her approach the pulpit. Now, this was 1978.
I'm not surprised.
Millis Doc Bass is talking about women at a time when not just clergy, but positions of authority at all.
Well, as far back as the late 1700s, I think that's when they discovered Sister Elizabeth.
Yes, sir.
Her name, her reputation.
Wow.
And so what I gather from that is the personal relationship with God, first of all, that compels anybody to do anything, whether it's preaching or
yes,
go
sir.
start a pantry or whatever it is, being compelled by the Spirit of God to do that. And so you've always had the Spirit of God working on and working with people.
Thank you.
In every generation. So you it's something that can't be stopped. It's only our systemic notions and our efforts to organize everything and control it that has tried to stop people from being what we don't think they have a right to be.
My Lord.
And so, but it is the power and the Spirit of God that has compelled people to do these things, to do wonders, work wonders, regardless of what other people thought about it. So that's where you get these women of God, these
yes,
sisters
sir.
who disobeyed men, so to speak, and had to fight, if you will, to preach.
Well, I want to get us at some point up to the time that we are experiencing now. Before we do that, I want to remind those who are with us that this is Wave Your Grades, KUAW.org, coming to you every Saturday from 1 until 2 p.m. here at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. My name is Carl Boyd. I have the honor of being with Minister Millis Doc Bass. And Brother Bass, those who are familiar with the program know that it is dedicated to veterans, and often featuring young people who are sharing their academic excellence and saying thank you in that way, and veterans who encourage them. I always make this disclaimer: I am a civilian. My oldest brother was a Marine. Next to him was an airman, and the one next to me was a soldier. But they saw to it that I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I owed them.
Nice.
I also feel that young people today owe those who have made the sacrifice or are making sacrifices their excellence. So during the course of the conversation, for those who are with us, I mentioned this to Millis Doc Bass and found out that you are also a veteran. Will you say something about that, please?
Well, I was caught up in the swirl, if you will, during the Vietnam era. And Muhammad Ali talked me out of going to Vietnam. He did a good job of it too. He said, get a school. If you're going to get in the military, get a school. I told him, I said, I'll join if you give me a school. And at that time, data processing was
Is that right?
Yeah. I had gone to Westport High School. It was the first year that they offered what they call data processing.
Yes, sir.
Computer technology, whatever.
Brother Walker would know something about that.
Yeah. Westport High School. And so I was one of the first students to enroll in that class.
Wow.
And so it gave me the awareness of what to ask for when I was joining the military. I said, I want a school in data processing. No problem.
Now, that's very interesting. When you say Muhammad Ali said that, was he someone whom you knew or you heard him?
Well, I just heard Muhammad Ali talking. He was being a bit more rank, but he said,
oh, yes.
You know what he said. And
absolutely.
So he said the Vietnamese never called him out of his name.
Exactly.
And so I took a tip from that. I said, well, I think I want to get something out of this. I'm not going to go and fight somebody that I don't, like that.
I see. But I appreciate your sharing that, because those who are regulars will understand that it is with reverence that I speak of those who have indeed been involved.
Absolutely.
And America needs to, on a continuum, revisit the stereotype of something called a hero. One of the things, and I want to come back to that and bring us up to date, but one of the things I promised at the beginning of the program was I would ask of Louis George Walker how, when this program is over, you might be able to find it, how they can access the many programs on KUAW.org. If he doesn't say it, let me say KUAW stands for knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Here is the founder of this internet worldwide station. Let's hear from Louis George Walker, please.
Well, thank you, Carl, and thank you to all that are listening today, wherever you may be in the world. This is KUAW Radio. As Carl said, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. You can pick us up when we're doing a live broadcast such as we're doing now, that's video. You can pick us up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and see and hear us worldwide. Also, we broadcast audio version 24 hours a day, and you can pick us up on Get Me Radio, on the TuneIn app, on My Radio, online radio bot, all of those sites. And on top of that, if you have a Amazon or a Google smart speaker, tell it to play KUAW. Tell Alexa, play play KUAW Radio, and we come on that. So we're at your beck and call anywhere that you are, and you can listen to us all day long. If you've got a Bluetooth-equipped car, you can come over the radio, and it's just like listening to one of the other local stations. So thank you for listening to KUAW Radio. We hope that you will check out our webpage too, www.kuaw.org.
Thank you very, very much for that announcement. Do one more thing for me, if you would, Brother Louis George Walker. He is also president of the Black Family Technology Awareness Association, and young people participate. I know often I'll hear you say something about a robotics competition or something like that. Do you mind giving contact information to parents and teachers who want young people to participate?
Yes, we'd like to let you know that we are the Black Family Technology Awareness Association. KUAW Radio is a project of the Black Family Technology Awareness Association in partnership with the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. And we also operate robotics competition teams in VEX and in Lego. If you'd like to get your child involved in those, you can contact us at 816-599-6893. Right now we have VEX robotics only going on, so that's for kids in middle school and high school. We'll be starting our Lego team hopefully when the new school year starts, but we do take kids from the 6th grade through the 12th grade right now. So we'd love to have you involved. Our projects are going. We just started a new project with the Alta Vista High School of the Guadalupe Centers that we'll be working with them on a podcast and on some computer-aided design work. So if you'd like to get your child involved in learning about this new technology, how they can use it, how it can help improve the standard of living not only for them and their families, but for our community, have them contact the Black Family Technology Awareness Association. We're at www.bftaa.org. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And as a matter of fact, I mentioned coming in that I was coming from a BFW auxiliary meeting, and found out last year that I could join the BFW Auxiliary. The auxiliary invites relatives of BFW or veterans who have fought in foreign wars, and my oldest brother was in Korea. Mm-hmm. And I say that because they have made me youth committee chair, youth chairman, and I am prayerful that we will get an opportunity to engage some partnerships with Black Family Technology Awareness Association with the young people who are involved there. So back to
This is fascinating work. This is fascinating.
Isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, it is just absolutely. Brother Walker, I know that you did not submit to being engaged through all of this time, but please tell us when you got started on the vision and how that has evolved.
Well, I would say that it started as I was an employee at Southwestern Bell Telephone Company, and we had an African-American group there called the Community Network, which was an employee resource group, and one of our presidents happened to be out in California and saw a thing called Black Family Technology Awareness Week. And they brought that back to all of the organizations to see if we would like to get involved with it to help spread it throughout the country. So we took it on right here in Kansas City, and I'm proud to say that the Southwestern Bells, or AT&T's Black Family Technology Awareness Association group, grew to encompass all of the community network chapters, and we held an event in 26 cities around the country that the Black Family Technology Awareness Group here in Kansas City was the lead group on, and organizing and getting that out.
Thank you. So
that's how you do it.
That's how you do it. What church do you attend?
Second Missionary Baptist Church in Grandview, Missouri, under the leadership of Bishop John Lewis Jr.
All right. Thank you very much. Pastor Ford was there for a while. And the reason I asked that and the reason I mentioned it, Wanda and I are at Friendship Baptist Church. Our pastor is James Terrence, is because you, our very special guest today, Minister Bass, have been talking about, I often quote you, the relevance of intelligence. I generally call upon that to refer to young people finding relevance in what they're studying, but I want to engage that phrase today as it relates to being faith-based and how important that is to confront issues we're dealing with today. Because you write about it eloquently every week in the call paper, and I don't know where else.
You know, interesting, because we have such a vast amount of information to draw from.
Yes, sir.
Experiences, what have you. I'm even, you know, as we move into, I try to stay current at least. We're moving into the, it's not a celebration, but a recognition of the Vietnam era. The veterans of the Vietnam War will be recognized, I think, March the 29th.
Yes, sir.
And so I thought about that in the context of the war that's in
Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. But also the war that they're going to be recognizing, this Vietnam War.
Yes, sir.
And so I happen to be watching Apocalypse Now, the Redux.
Oh.
This is probably my third time watching, but this is the Redux. And
yes,
they had about 48 minutes of scenes that we hadn't seen before. But I listened to Colonel Kurtz, the guy that they're going after to assassinate, because he had kind of went over the edge in his warfare methods. And he said something like this. He said, if you're going to fight a war, you must become friends with horror.
Wow.
And that stuck out to me. I said, and it's not just restricted to his mental deficiencies and what have you in that area of his thinking. It is the reality that when you revisit the horrors of the Vietnam era war, Vietnam was a horrific war. We try to decorate it and paint it up and fix it up and what have you, but it was horrifying. All war is horrifying. And so I think of it in the context of, how do I write about this? How do I write about this and pull in Ukraine, Russia, America, China, and all the players that may be involved in these things going forward, particularly as it relates to a possible apocalyptic event?
See,
which involves everybody.
Now, that's interesting, because it sounds like you have been in on my wife's conversation about those very kinds of things. And we have grown up. We are a little older than some of our young counterparts with the expression, man's inhumanity to man.
That's what Whoopi got in trouble for.
And so you see.
Yes.
Here we are at a point in our existence when someone somewhere has to confront, but if it is not faith-based, it is almost an exercise in futility, if not certainly an exercise in futility.
What you don't want to run into anywhere on the planet are people who have lost their faith.
Come on.
What you don't want to be having to confront is people who are disconnected from their Creator. Because not only have they become comfortable or can become comfortable with horror, they can become comfortable with committing it. And so these atrocities that are percolating, they're just percolating right under our nose, like the coffee pot that has, World War III percolating in it. And so we don't even know, we haven't been here before with the levels of technology and war resources and what have you. We don't know what we can do. We don't know how horrific it will look. And so I'm hoping that young people will be triggered to start thinking about the future.
Yes, sir.
And what role they can play in toning down some of this stuff and being a part of the discussion and writing and rapping or whatever it is that they can do to participate in the dialogue of the human family, because it's getting ready to get hot.
You know what? This is so very important, and I appreciate having this opportunity to talk with you about it. In the 1990s, mid-1990s, perhaps early 1990s, we were working with young people with the Kansas City, Missouri School District.
Yes.
And some who were even in other districts. We are now in 2022.
Wow.
I didn't know that I would live long enough to say honestly, nothing surprises me anymore. Now, that is a little scary to me. When we were working with young people, we could honestly bring a couple of set leaders together and have a conversation, lay down some arms. When we look at the incidents of homicide that has to be complemented by mental illness, we need these young people today to be able to envision and to hear from a Millis Doc Bass how powerful God truly is, but to step up and have the courage to be good and be peaceful.
Sadly, and this is not taking anything away from what you say, I was in that era.
Yes, sir.
We worked together.
Yes, sir.
I was on one of Al Brooks shows.
Yes.
And Alvin Brooks shows, and he I had written a rap.
Yeah.
I'm telling God on you. That was the name. I'm telling
Yes,
God on. Well, translation is, what else can we do but consult with and appeal to the Heavenly Father to give us information and the wherewithal and the wisdom to calm ourselves down.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? To have some kind of peaceful approach to life. And so these young folk that we're exposed to now, the statisticians tell us that their numbers are diminishing in the church.
Yes. Yes.
So there will be fewer
Yes, sir.
of them of faith. Well, I only have one answer to that. I mean, what else are we going to do but we keep preaching,
Yes,
keep
sir.
talking,
Yes, sir.
keep communicating,
Exactly.
keep having the same conversation over. There's nothing better than that we'll be able to do.
One of the things that I often say about this program, because it is a program dedicated to veterans and asking American students to strive for excellence in honor of our troops, and I often make the statement that it is tragic that you would have someone deployed come home to a community that's more violent than where they had to serve.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about March 29th, so we have 10 days or so where we can look at what kind of tribute are we talking about. Mm-hmm. I mentioned being a part of the BFW Auxiliary, and Josiah Tyler, who is the head of that auxiliary, explained the difference between thank you and welcome home. And as we ask young people to say thank you in deeds, not just in words, she was saying that those who are from Vietnam would rather hear, or should rather hear, welcome home rather than thank you, because they never got that welcome.
No, it was foul. It was very foul.
At least.
Yes. I hope I can tell this in a short. I have a friend who did a whole tour in Vietnam. Never got a scratch. Probably not even a mosquito bite. Came home to Washington, D.C., one of the more violent cities in America at the time. Sir. Got beat almost to death by folks who looked like him, and was in a coma and was paralyzed and now is struggling to this day just to try to walk. Those are the realities of where we live. How do you get across
my Lord?
Yeah. How do you get a message? These are your people.
Thank you.
Our people.
Thank you.
And so the biggest struggle, it seems to me, to get a message of peace to the people. You know, I marvel at Martin Luther King. Every now and then I revisit some of his speeches.
Yes, sir.
And I'm like, how do you pull this off? You never stopped talking about nonviolence till the day they shot you down.
That's right. That's right. But you see, here is why I am so honored to have Millis Doc Bass on this particular program. It has everything to do with consistency. Wanda has a sister, Diana, and Diana has a program that comes out of St. Louis, and it says, pray without ceasing. Mm-hmm. That's rather important. When you say without ceasing, that suggests in good times, tough times, flush times, weary times, I mean, without ceasing.
Ooh.
And there's an attitude that goes with it, because there are many people who will look at prophecy and they will talk about it, and they will hear me say often, as they talk about the many things that are wrong and that had been predicted, I often find myself saying, if my people who are called by my name, but this is what I like about the prayer, would humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven. Then will I forgive their sins. Then will I heal the land. Now, I'm going with that.
And all of that is twofold. It's, the prayer does two things. It affects me first, then it petitions God. We don't order him. We're not directing him.
Thank you,
it's
sir.
a petition.
Yes, sir.
It's the only thing we had during slavery. It is how our theology developed. Our theology developed in supplication and petitions. Our theology was not developed in seminary. It was developed in praying, hollering out to God for deliverance, and what have you. And we began to form based on the instincts we had with us already to be in touch with God. We began to develop a way of communicating with God where he communicated back with us. And this is how you do it.
Praise the Lord. Hold on just a second, because I want to find out from Brother Walker how we're doing on time. And yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. You have about another 18 minutes.
Ooh, that is so good, because
you go.
Well, I'm going to be throwing it back to you, because this is what is so important about asking you to come on. One of the things that we have talked about is how we decry the existence of crime in our own community, too often perpetrated on people who look like us. But the wonderful thing about what I was saying, where consistency is concerned, you got to keep writing. You got to keep preaching. You got to keep saying these words, because you and I have now lived long enough to be able to testify that young people we run into who say they remember you, or that you might have had an influence, sometimes they'll say something that you said that you didn't know you were saying.
Yes.
Or they caught something that was not the major message, but it was major in their lives.
Somebody died in the community where I was running the youth center down in Blue Hills recently. And the guys, because the guys were like 12, 10 years old when I was working in the neighborhood, 15, something like that.
Yes.
All grown up now.
Yes.
Hard heads.
Believe me.
Gangsters.
Yes, sir.
Some thugs, some good guys, and all that.
Exactly.
They were out there too. But they sent me a group shot. I wouldn't have recognized one of them. But they send me a group, and they're always telling me, Doc, we appreciate what you did. You're in the hood, blah, 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 blah. But let me say this. The pandemic, I'm going back, the pandemic, to me, seemed to have allowed us time
Ooh.
to reconfigure, to rethink,
Thank you.
to redo,
Come on.
reconsider. Now, we didn't get any instruction from God on this, but when it's quiet,
Yes, sir.
that's a cue.
Yes, sir.
Start thinking.
Come on.
Start redoing stuff. And so for me, it was a period of reconsideration. Whatever it is we thought we knew about God, whatever theology we had, you had time to, because churches was closed.
Thank you.
The gatherings were short, you know what I mean, and limited and far and few between. But now, for the first time in our generation, we have the opportunity to say, oh my God, maybe what I thought I knew, I didn't know.
Wow.
And I have to reconsider some things about prayer, about this, about whatever. And so I thought about prayer, being consistent with it. Here now, you have an opportunity to see and look at the impact it has finally had on you. Did it work on you? Was it therapeutic for you? Did you clarify some things for you?
My God.
There's some opportunity, it would seem to me, that if prayer, y'all said, is what you told me, changes things.
Yes, sir.
Did it change
My
me?
Lord.
Is the question.
Ooh.
Did it change me? Was I able to make some readjustments in how in my view of life, in my considerations of it, in my ideologies, in my thinking, my paradigm? Did anything change in me? It ain't going to change God.
My Lord.
It's not going to change God.
And by the way, I said my wife's sister did not say her name. Diana Clark Gamble is her name. Pray without ceasing, how important that is.
Yes.
And one of the things that occurs to me, particularly when I am with someone like you, in as much as we are on one accord about the power of God and how important it is to hold to that, I have the audacity to think. In fact, I believe that there can and will be a significant positive turnaround in our community because of the Millis Doc Bass among us. When I talk about consistency. Now, before I finish that thought, I cannot get away without asking Minister Millis Doc Bass to tell us how you can be contacted and the kinds of presentations you make, classes you teach, writings you write.
That's interesting. I tell you what, the best way to contact me is shoot, probably by phone number.
Okay.
Yeah, 804-869-7009. I still respond. You know,
Okay.
It's a worldwide telephone number. But you know, I don't do too much on Facebook anymore. It's a time-consuming event. I'm like, no, I think I can do something else here. But you know, my books are on. Let's see, where are they at now? Black Archives?
Yes.
Yeah, they're at the Black Archives. I'm going to do a better job of promoting my books.
Okay,
I need to
please do.
I'm going to do a better job of that. I'm trying to do a better job of getting them done now.
Yes, sir.
There's some things that I really would like to get out. There's about 2 or 3 books that are just on the shelf, on the burner.
Yes.
I'm trying to get them out. And so I'm going to do a better job of promoting those. I'm trying to do a better job of being a better man.
Praise
That's
God.
really important to me now.
Praise God.
Because
I'm with you.
consistency
I'm so with you.
and integrity.
Yes, sir.
Keywords.
Yes, sir.
Integrity. Be who you say you are. And I meant to go back while you were talking about, you know, the people who might hurt you most might be closest to you. And I thought about the gang summits we had.
Yes, sir.
If you recall, you were here. And the people that I met, you know, during those times, who I had an opportunity to just kick it with and work with.
Yes.
And to help make transitions back into the community. I learned a great deal from them. But I'm also learning everyone is reachable. Everyone is reachable.
Thank you.
It's always, and if it's
Thank
not
you.
me,
come on,
it may be God.
Praise the Lord.
It may be God.
Yes, sir.
He has some things that put us in a squeeze that we end up saying, "Oh my God."
Yes, sir.
And once He gets your
Isn't that
attention,
the truth?
but, now that I have your attention,
Yes, sir.
I have some things I'd like you to hear, and it happens quite like that. I'm learning how to relax and say, this is really God's business. I do my part, but ultimately, it's on Him.
Now, and by the way, Brother Walker, come right on in when you feel a need to or a desire to. I hear you responding. I'm praying that I'm remembering 804-869-7009.
That's a phenomenal memory that you have, Brother.
Well, I mean, I wanted to remember that. That is extremely important to us. And let me tell you something, man, why this is such a joy, such a treat to me. Mm-hmm. You make me mindful of the fact that prolific authors often come up with new books, so that you might be waiting for Jawanza Kunjufu's next book.
Mm-hmm.
John Grisham used to write the novels about the courtroom, waiting for the next book. But my privilege in being able to sit down and talk with Millis Doc Bass suggests to me that I might ask you to revisit some of your earlier writings. Because when you were probably one of the few, if not the lone voice, explaining the phenomenon of gang behavior from inside a young brother's head, from Compton, California to Kansas City, Missouri, I think, please do new works, but let us not forget what you've written in the past.
Well, one of the things, I had the misfortune, however you want to phrase it, to spend about 5 or 6 years in prison.
Yes, sir.
And so there are certain things that are common to men who are incarcerated. And those commonalities kind of spread across the community, so that when you come back into the community, it's not so much that they give you stripes, but you have a certain kind of credibility.
Yes, sir.
It just buys you enough time to have a conversation.
Yes, sir.
Because they can relate. If they haven't been, they're curious about it. If they have been, it's common. And so it's another platform.
Yes.
As odd as that sounds.
No.
It's another platform, just like, radio and blogs and
yes.
And so on and so on. And so I never, as old as we get or as seasoned as we get, I hope to never lose the ability to communicate with our people, whatever age bracket they're
Come
in.
on. Yes, sir.
Whatever group they're in.
Yes, sir.
And so that's my hope. And so I struggle even in my meditations and in my writing. How do I shape this so that it can possibly connect with the audience?
And the importance of it, from my standpoint, is I can say two things about Minister Millis Doc Bass. And one is, somebody says, how do we talk to these young people? So here is someone who knows how to talk directly to young people. But the second thing that is important about picking up your writings from the time that you started was you can also teach us how to deal with young people, so that you become a resource that is important for all of us.
Wow.
I think about a prison ministry going to Leavenworth with Hanif Khalil, for instance.
Yes.
And there was that point during our visit when he was speaking to some young Muslim brothers who were in prison, and I was speaking to some Christian or non-denominational brothers who were there. Then we finish and we bring all of these brothers together. You, better than anyone whom I know as it relates to that phenomenon, a prison ministry, might be able to explain the importance of getting their attention then, and why is that so possible?
So possible in the context of being where they are?
Being able where they are at that time.
If there's always this yearning in the human spirit,
yes, sir,
to connect with the familiar. Okay? So here is, in these instances, black young men, black older men.
Yes.
Similar experiences or some wisdom, some knowledge. I would always tell them, look, I can't rap and I can't dance. We can talk.
Thank you.
And what I would do was try to break open the system. Just break open these shells and expose the system and kind of help them understand why you cannot play into it.
Wow.
And so you
Thank
don't
you.
get to,
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't get to call yourself a player and a hustler and that kind of thing if you don't know the game.
Wow.
And so here's the game.
Yes, sir.
So what I try to do
Yes, sir.
is break the game down and tell them how they are exposing themselves to get played.
This is Wave Your Grades on KUAW.org, W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. Listening to Minister Millie Stock Bass. My name is Carl Boyd, and based upon something you just said, can't rap, can't dance, can't sing songs, can't do those things, but I can write or I can talk. But this is what you exemplify so well in whatever the extension of that sentence is, but I can. And that is 2 words: be sincere. And young people recognize it when it is, and they recognize it when it isn't.
That is true. That's true. Well, I'll tell you how I got the name Doc.
Yes, sir.
It's not because my initials are MD, but when I was in the first prison I was in was at Colorado State Penitentiary back in the 70s, early 70s. And so you know what the tone of the community was at that time. And so
yes, sir.
I did a lot of systems analysis.
Okay.
In those days, we talked about the system. We peeled back the onion and we looked at it inside out and tried to understand it.
Yes.
And so, because of that approach that I took, the sociology of this or the psychology of that, or the phenomena, whatever it was, the pathologies.
Yes, sir.
We got into the pathology. It was important for me to understand what was happening to me in this particular environment.
Thank you.
I am incarcerated. What happens to men who are incarcerated? You don't escape it, but you certainly need to know what's happening to you. What kind of PTSD are you exposed to and going through as an incarcerated individual? And how does that spread across, the compound? Why is he behaving that way? Why are they considered to be institutionalized? The young boys who would get out of jail, come back 10 days later, go back out, come back 5 days later,
yes, sir.
And be institutionalized,
yes, sir.
programmed,
yes, sir.
if you will, to get on that merry-go-round and come back and forth and back and forth. And so these are the kind of discussions we had between playing chess or trying to find something to get high on or whatever, But that's what we did.
So they would say, here's Doc.
Well, yeah, that kind of, yeah. They started calling me the doctor.
Oh, I see.
The doctor,
okay.
and then
yes,
they
sir.
shortened it to Doc.
Yes, indeed.
And so that's the approach to my writing. I don't try to use concepts that I presume that people understand. I try to break them down and make them make sense.
Well, I'll tell you one of the reasons that I am optimistic, even in the throes of probably the worst divisiveness I have experienced as it relates to being based on hatred. I've been through a lot of stuff, the civil rights and all.
For
of
this
that kind of thing.
generation, it was terrifying.
Yes,
another
sir.
one, yes.
But when you look at today, the examples that adults are showing of just outright vitriol. When we were working with young people, and somebody would say, "Carl, what is wrong with these young people today?" My response was always, "Old people. That's what's wrong with young people today. They didn't just get that way. Young people learn more by example than they do by instruction."
Okay.
And the examples that we have given, unfortunately, have not lent themselves towards peace and tranquility, but toughness. And I understand that we're coming near the end of the program, and I want to say to 804-869-7009 that we need you on a consistent basis. And we began this program talking about new authors and those kinds of things. So with the 4 minutes or so that are left, let me turn it over to Millis Doc Bass for whatever closing remarks you want to make, understanding that you have to come back.
Thank you is what I have to say, first of all, for the invitation, for even considering me to share this time with you. But I must say this. I love your optimism. I love your freshness that you're able to give to any conversation, and just your optimism. I must play my role as the prophet.
Yes.
I must say to us all that those are the times that we're living in. What you just described for you, we are living in those periods when men will be haters of God, more than lovers of themselves, and so on. And this vitriol, this percolation of wars and rumors of war, all of these are the things that have been prophesied. We're getting closer and closer and closer to them. So what do I say to that? What do I say to that? It is not a retreat, but it is a summary of what things will come to when the scriptures say, "Save yourselves,
praise God,
from this untoward generation." Save yourselves,
my Lord.
It does not mean, I don't think it means abandon people and run off and leave folk.
No, definitely
Make
not.
sure.
Praise God.
Like they say on the airplane, you put your mask on first.
That's it.
Put your mask on first.
Praise God. Millis Doc Bass, thank you so very, very much. I'm going to work on If My People. But I am telling you, you have to come back. We have to continue to talk about writing and having a forum somehow to explore the positive writing that is being done. My name is.
Try to stay on task.
Oh well, no. Believe me, when you and I get together, there are so many conversations available to us. But with each program, at the end of each program, I offer a word for the day, and they're morning messages to students across the USA. Your Stoots for Boots message for this day. Stoots for Boots asks American students to strive for excellence in honor of our troops, and STOOTS, Stoots, stands for Students Theater of Operations, the school.
Yes.
Today, March 19th, to students across the USA, your Stoots for Boots message for this day: I shall never stand so tall as a wounded warrior who can't stand at all. My name is Carl Boyd for Wave Your Grades, KUAW.org. Gracious God and wonderful Wanda, I'm on my way home.
We're shining a long overdue spotlight on the hidden figures of untaught history who deserve